The planet known as Noxterra was a place where light never reached, hidden in the deepest corners of the galaxy. Shrouded in perpetual darkness, it was a world that defied the laws of nature. No stars illuminated the sky, no sun warmed its surface. Yet, humanity had carved out a home in this desolate place. They had built underground cities, their structures illuminated by artificial lights and bioluminescent plants that bathed their surroundings in an eerie glow. Life on Noxterra was harsh and unforgiving. The endless darkness was not just a physical barrier but a psychological one, pressing down on the inhabitants, testing their resolve daily. Over time, humans had adapted. They had become creatures of the night, their senses sharpened by the absence of light. This was a world where only the strong and the resourceful could survive. The story begins with three of Noxterra's most elite soldiers, Marek, Tolia, and Daxon. Each was a master of their craft, honed by years of battling the planet's harsh conditions. Marek, the leader, was known for his calm and calculated demeanor, a strategist whose mind was as sharp as the blade he carried. Tolia, the team's tech expert, was adept at electronic warfare and tactical maneuvers, able to manipulate the environment to her advantage. Daxon, the powerhouse of the group, was fearless in combat, a warrior who thrived in the chaos of battle. One fateful day, an alien ship made an emergency landing on Noxterra. The craft belonged to the Zork, a species unaccustomed to the perpetual darkness that enveloped this world. To them, Noxterra was a death trap, a place where even the simplest task became a challenge in the oppressive blackness. Marek and his team quickly detected the crash site and set out to investigate. The planet's dense darkness was their ally, rendering them invisible to the struggling alien. "This is no place for them," Marek muttered as they moved silently through the shadowy landscape. "Noxterra will be their grave. They won't last long out here," Tolia added, her voice barely a whisper. "We can use the darkness against them." As they neared the crash site, they found Zork stumbling through the dark, disoriented and vulnerable. The alien was clearly out of its element, its every movement betraying its fear and confusion. Marek motioned for his team to surround the creature, their approach silent and deadly. When they were close enough, Marek spoke, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "This planet is not for you," he said coldly. The alien spun around, trying to locate the source of the voice, but the darkness was too thick. In one swift motion, Daxon lunged forward, tackling the alien to the ground. "You're in our world now," he growled, securing their captive. As Daxon restrained Zork, Tolia quickly accessed the alien's ship, her fingers flying over the controls. She hacked into its systems, severing all communications with the outside world. "There's no escape for you," she said, her eyes fixed on the data streaming across the screen. Zork struggled, but was no match for the seasoned soldiers. It was clear that the alien was terrified, its senses overwhelmed by the planet's impenetrable darkness. This was not a battlefield it had prepared for. Marek knelt beside the captured alien, his expression unreadable. "You've made a grave mistake coming here," he said. "This is our home, and we don't take kindly to intruders." The darkness around them seemed to deepen as Marek's words hung in the air. Noxterra was a place where only those who had embraced the shadows could survive. For the Zork, this world would be nothing less than a nightmare. As they prepared to transport their prisoner back to the human settlement, Marek's mind was already racing ahead, contemplating the implications of an alien presence on their world. Noxterra had always been a place of secrets, and now those secrets were about to be revealed. "We need to find out why they're here," Marek said, his voice laced with determination. "And we need to be ready for whatever comes next." Tolia nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting more enemies to emerge from the darkness. "They won't know what hit them," she replied. Daxon tightened his grip on the alien, his muscles tensing with anticipation. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We'll show them what it means to live in the dark." And so, the first chapter of their battle on Nox Terra began. The darkness that once seemed like an insurmountable obstacle had become their greatest weapon, and they were prepared to wield it with deadly precision. Back at Fort Umbra, the largest human settlement on Nox Terra, Marek and his team delivered the captured Zork to the interrogation chamber. The alien was still disoriented, its senses dulled by the planet's unyielding darkness. The human guards, their faces hidden behind visors designed to enhance sight in the pitch black, dragged the alien into the dimly lit room. The chamber was a stark contrast to the outside world. The walls were lined with cold steel, and the only light came from flickering monitors displaying various readings and data. Marek stood at the center, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Talia was at his side, typing furiously at a terminal, decrypting the data she had extracted from the Zork ship. Daxon leaned against the wall, his eyes never leaving their prisoner. "We need answers," Marek said, his voice low but commanding. "Why did they come here? What do they want with Nox Terra?" The Zork, still reeling from its capture, looked up at Marek with wide, fearful eyes. Its alien physiology was ill-suited to the planet's environment. It struggled to breathe, its chest heaving with each labored breath. "Speak," Marek ordered, stepping closer. The Zork recoiled, instinctively drawing back, but there was nowhere to go. The alien finally managed to croak out a few words, its voice strained and trembling. "We were not meant to land here," it stammered. "Our ship malfunctioned. We crashed." Marek's gaze narrowed. "And why were you near Nox Terra in the first place?" he pressed. "What was your mission?" The Zork hesitated, its eyes darting nervously around the room as if seeking an escape. But there was none. The darkness was everywhere, and it was suffocating. "We were sent to explore," the alien finally admitted. "Our people have heard rumors of a world hidden in darkness, where no light can reach. We were curious, but we did not expect this." Marek exchanged a glance with Talia. "Curious," he repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You risked everything for curiosity?" The Zork nodded weakly. "We are explorers. Knowledge is our mission. We did not come to harm." Daxon pushed off the wall, his expression one of skepticism. "And yet you brought weapons," he said, his voice laced with accusation. The alien's gaze dropped. "We were cautious. We did not know what to expect." Marek took a step back, considering the alien's words. He had faced countless enemies in his time on Nox Terra, but this situation was different. The Zork did not seem to be a threat, at least not in the conventional sense. But their presence on Nox Terra could not be ignored. "Talia," Marek said, turning to his tech expert, "what have you found?" Talia didn't look up from her screen. "Their ship's logs confirm their story," she replied. "They were on a reconnaissance mission, gathering data on unknown worlds. But they didn't plan to land here. Their ship experienced a critical failure in orbit, forcing them down." Marek frowned, deep in thought. "So they're not an invasion force," he said, half to himself. "But that doesn't mean they're harmless." He turned back to the Zork. "Your people will be looking for you," he said, his voice hardening. "And when they find out you've gone missing, they'll come for you." The alien nodded, a hint of hope flickering in its eyes. "Yes. They will come. They will take us home." Marek's expression darkened. "No," he said firmly. "They won't. Because you're going to send them a message." The Zork's hope faded, replaced by confusion. "A message?" Marek nodded. "You're going to tell them that Nox Terra is a death trap. that no one should ever come here. You'll warn them that this world belongs to humanity, and we will defend it with everything we have." The alien's eyes widened in fear. "But they won't listen," it protested. "They'll think it's a trick." Marek leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Then make them listen," he said. "Because if they don't, there won't be anything left of them when we're done." The Zork trembled, its fear palpable. It had never encountered anything like the humans of Nox Terra. These were not the soft, fragile beings it had expected. They were something else entirely, something ruthless and unyielding, forged in the heart of the darkest world in the galaxy. Marek straightened up, his demeanor once again calm and controlled. "Talia, prepare the transmission," he ordered. "Daxon, make sure our guest stays cooperative." As Talia worked to establish a secure line to the Zork's homeworld, Marek turned his thoughts to the future. This incident was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and the secrets of Nox Terra were too valuable to remain hidden forever. Sooner or later, others would come. But when they did, they would find that humanity had become the true masters of the dark. Marek looked out into the endless blackness beyond the walls of Fort Umbra. This was their world, their domain, and they would defend it with everything they had. The darkness was their ally, and in its depths they would forge their destiny. As the transmission was sent, Marek's mind was already planning their next move. The Zork would serve as a warning, but it wouldn't be enough to deter everyone. There would be others, other explorers, other invaders, drawn by the mystery and danger of Nox Terra. But Marek wasn't afraid. He welcomed the challenge. The darkness had shaped them, made them stronger, more cunning, more dangerous than any other species in the galaxy. And they would prove it, time and time again. Nox Terra was more than a home. It was a fortress, a weapon, a crucible that had transformed humanity into something new, something more. And in the heart of the darkness, they would rise. The transmission to the Zork homeworld was sent, carrying the dire warning Marek had crafted. The alien captive, now a reluctant messenger, was returned to its holding cell under heavy guard. The humans of Nox Terra were not naive. They knew this would not be the end of their troubles. The galaxy was vast, and word of a mysterious planet shrouded in eternal night would only attract more attention. But Marek was prepared for what was to come. He and his team had lived in the darkness long enough to understand its power. Nox Terra had taught them how to survive in conditions that would cripple other species. Now, they would use that knowledge to their advantage. As the days passed, Marek intensified the fortification efforts at Fort Umbra. Every resource was devoted to reinforcing their defenses and ensuring that Nox Terra would be a fortress that no invader could breach. The humans had lived in the shadows for too long to be caught off guard now. Talia and her team worked around the clock, developing new technologies to harness the unique properties of the planet. They created devices that could manipulate the darkness, using it as both a shield and a weapon. The atmosphere, thick and oppressive, became a tool in their arsenal, allowing them to cloak their movements and strike from the shadows. Daxon led a squad of elite soldiers on regular patrols, scouting the perimeter of their territory and ensuring no threats went undetected. They moved like phantoms through the blackness, their gear optimized for silent, deadly efficiency. Any unwelcome visitors would find themselves lost and disoriented, easy prey for the hunters of Nox Terra. One evening, as the team gathered for a strategy meeting, Talia shared some disturbing news. "I've intercepted a series of communications from the Zork's homeworld," she said, her voice tinged with concern. "It seems our message was received, but it's not having the effect we hoped for." Marek leaned forward, his brow furrowing. "Explain." Talia sighed, tapping a few keys to bring up a holographic display. "The Zork leadership is split. Some believe our warning, but others think we're bluffing. They're considering sending a larger force to investigate, and possibly to conquer." Daxon cursed under his breath, his expression hardening. "They're underestimating us," he said grimly. "That'll be their last mistake." Marek nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "We need to make sure they regret even thinking about it," he said. "But first, we have to gather more intelligence. We need to know exactly what they're planning and when they plan to strike." Talia nodded in agreement. "I can try to hack into their communications network," she offered. "It won't be easy, but if I can get in, we'll have a much better idea of what we're up against." "Do it," Marek ordered. "Daxon, I want you and your team on high alert. If they're sending scouts, we need to know the moment they arrive." The next few days were a blur of activity. Talia and her tech team worked tirelessly, their screens flickering with streams of alien code as they attempted to infiltrate the Zork's network. Daxon and his soldiers patrolled the borders of their territory with increased vigilance, ready to repel any intruders. Finally, after days of effort, Talia broke through. "I've got it," she announced, her voice taut with urgency. "They're planning to send a fleet, a full invasion force. They'll be here within a week." The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. Marek's jaw tightened, but his eyes were steely with determination. "Then we have 7 days to prepare," he said. "We've faced worse odds before, and we've always come out on top. This will be no different." The next week was a whirlwind of preparation. Fort Umbra was transformed into a fortress bristling with weapons and defenses. The humans of Nox Terra knew they were outnumbered, but they also knew they had the home field advantage. They would use the darkness to their advantage, striking from the shadows and disappearing before the enemy could retaliate. Marek oversaw every aspect of the preparations, his mind constantly running through scenarios and contingencies. He knew the Zork would be expecting a conventional battle, but that was not what they would get. Instead, they would face a guerrilla war, fought in the dark against an enemy they couldn't see or understand. As the day of the invasion drew closer, Marek gathered his team for one final briefing. "This is it," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "We've been living in the dark for years, and now it's time to show the galaxy what we're capable of. We're not just survivors. We're warriors, and this is our world. Anyone who tries to take it from us will find out the hard way that Nox Terra doesn't forgive or forget." Daxon grinned, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "They won't know what hit them," he said confidently. "We'll make sure of it." Talia nodded, her expression determined. "We've got the element of surprise on our side," she added. "They won't be able to adapt to the darkness the way we have. This is our domain, and they're trespassing." Marek looked around the room, his gaze meeting each of his team members in turn. "Remember what we've built here," he said. "We've turned this world into a place where humanity can thrive, even in the darkest conditions. We're going to protect that, no matter what it takes." The team dispersed, each member heading to their assigned duties with a renewed sense of purpose. The Zork fleet was coming, but they would find that Nox Terra was not the easy target they expected. It was a place where the darkness was more than just the absence of light. It was a weapon, wielded by the humans who had made it their home. As the countdown to the invasion ticked away, Marek stood on the observation deck, looking out into the blackness that surrounded them. The stars were hidden behind thick clouds of dust and gas, leaving only the impenetrable void. But to Marek it was not a void. It was their shield, their cloak, their greatest asset. In the heart of the darkness, the humans of Nox Terra waited, and when the Zork fleet arrived, they would be ready. The galaxy would soon learn that there was nothing more dangerous than a human defending their home, especially when that home was a world of eternal night. The darkness was their ally, and in its embrace they would fight. The days leading up to the Zork invasion were filled with tension and preparation. The people of Nox Terra worked tirelessly to fortify their defenses, aware that this battle would be unlike any they had faced before. The darkness that had once been their adversary was now their greatest weapon, and they intended to wield it with deadly precision. Marek stood on the command deck of Fort Umbra, gazing out into the inky blackness that surrounded them. His mind was focused, his thoughts sharp as he reviewed the battle plans for the 100th time. Every detail had been meticulously considered, every possibility accounted for. They couldn't afford any mistakes. "Talia, status report," Marek ordered, turning to the lead engineer who had been working day and night to prepare their defenses. Talia's fingers danced across the control panel as she brought up a series of holographic displays. "All systems are operational," she reported. "The darkness manipulation devices are fully charged, and the atmospheric disruptors are ready to be deployed. We've also established a network of sensor drones in orbit to give us early warning of the Zork fleet's approach." Marek nodded, satisfied. "Good work. Daxon, what's the status of the strike teams?" Daxon, who had been pacing the deck like a caged predator, stopped to face Marek. "The teams are in position," he said. "We've split them into small, mobile units. They're equipped with the latest stealth gear and are ready to strike the moment the Zork make their move." Marek's gaze swept over the room, taking in the faces of his team. They were tired, but their eyes were bright with determination. They knew what was at stake. "Listen up, everyone," Marek began, his voice steady and commanding. "The Zork think they can come here and take what we've built. They think the darkness will be their enemy, but they're wrong. We are the masters of this world, and we will use every advantage we have to ensure they regret ever setting foot in our domain." There was a murmur of agreement from the assembled soldiers and engineers. They had been through hell to make Nox Terra their home, and they weren't about to let anyone take it from them. As the final preparations were made, the team settled into their positions. The hours ticked by in a tense silence, broken only by the occasional status update or whispered conversation. The anticipation was palpable, a heavy weight that hung over them as they waited for the inevitable. Finally, the alert they had been dreading and expecting came. "Incoming transmission from the outer sensor net," Talia announced, her voice tight with tension. "The Zork fleet is entering our sector. Estimated time to contact, 3 hours." Marek straightened, his mind snapping into focus. "All units, prepare for engagement," he ordered. "This is it, people. Let's show them what Nox Terra is made of." As the Zork fleet drew closer, the humans of Nox Terra made their final preparations. The darkness manipulation devices were activated, plunging the planet into an even deeper, almost tangible blackness. The atmosphere was thickened with particulate matter, creating a fog that would disorient and confuse the invaders. Daxon's strike teams moved into position, spreading out across the terrain like shadows. They were silent and invisible, waiting for the moment to strike. Marek watched the tactical displays, his mind calculating and recalculating the best course of action. "Incoming!" Talia's voice rang out, breaking the tense silence. "The Zork have launched a wave of reconnaissance drones." Marek's lips curled into a grim smile. "Let them come," he muttered. "They'll find nothing but darkness." The first wave of drones entered the planet's atmosphere, their sensors straining to pierce the blackness. But Nox Terra was ready. The disruptors activated, sending out pulses of energy that scrambled the drone systems. One by one, they faltered and crashed, their data useless to the Zork fleet. "That's just the beginning," Marek said, his voice calm. "The real fight is yet to come." It wasn't long before the Zork launched their main assault. Warships descended through the thickened atmosphere, their weapons hot and ready to unleash devastation on the human strongholds. But the humans didn't wait to be attacked. They struck first. Daxon's teams moved like wraiths through the darkness, targeting the Zork forces with precision strikes. Explosions lit up the night, brief flashes of light quickly swallowed by the void. The Zork, disoriented and blind in the blackness, struggled to mount an effective counterattack. "Status report," Marek demanded as he monitored the unfolding battle. "Minimal casualties on our side," Talia replied, her fingers flying across the controls. "We've taken out several of their landing ships and disrupted their communications. They're struggling to maintain cohesion." "Keep the pressure on them," Marek ordered. "Don't give them a chance to regroup." The battle raged on, the darkness of Nox Terra turning into a battlefield where the humans held every advantage. The Zork, who had come expecting to crush a primitive world, found themselves trapped in a nightmare where every shadow held an enemy. But the Zork were nothing if not relentless. They adapted quickly, their warships shifting tactics to compensate for the environmental challenges. They began to deploy their own drones, designed to emit bursts of light to cut through the darkness. Marek watched as the battlefield shifted, his mind racing. The Zork were learning, adapting to the conditions. He knew they needed to change their tactics. "Talia, Daxon, listen up," Marek called out, his voice firm. "We need to lure them deeper into the atmosphere. Use the terrain to our advantage. Force them into the canyons where their numbers won't matter." Daxon nodded, already relaying orders to his teams. "We'll funnel them into the gorge east of Fort Umbra," he said. "They'll be sitting ducks." As the humans shifted their strategy, the battle began to turn once more. The Zork, drawn into the narrow confines of the canyons, found themselves hemmed in by the very terrain they had underestimated. The humans struck from above and below, using the environment to create choke points and ambushes. Marek watched as the Zork forces were slowly whittled down, their warships forced into positions where their superior firepower was of little use. The humans were relentless, striking with precision and retreating into the shadows before the Zork could retaliate. "Keep pushing them," Marek urged, his eyes glued to the tactical displays. "We've got them on the run." And indeed, the Zork began to falter. Their once coordinated assault had devolved into chaos as they struggled to navigate the hostile environment. The humans, masters of the dark, picked them off one by one, turning the tide of the battle. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Zork fleet began to retreat. Their forces, battered and broken, pulled back from Nox Terra's atmosphere, abandoning their ground forces in a desperate bid to escape. Marek allowed himself a small, grim smile. "We did it," he said quietly. "But this isn't over. They'll be back, and next time, they'll be even more prepared." Daxon grunted in agreement, his face flushed with the adrenaline of battle. "Let them come," he said fiercely. "We'll be ready." As the last of the Zork ships disappeared into the void, the humans of Nox Terra began to regroup. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Marek knew that they had only delayed the inevitable. The Zork would return, and when they did, they would be even more determined to conquer this dark, mysterious world. But for now, Nox Terra was safe. The humans had proven that they could not only survive in the darkness, they could thrive. And as long as they held that advantage, they would continue to defend their home, no matter what the galaxy threw at them. I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.